So in the last video, we looked at soundscape composition as a practice that brought together a number of ideas that we'll be exploring in the next 6 modules. In this video, I wanted to look at another practice that again brings together a bunch of different ideas we'll be exploring, but brings it together more from the perspective of algorithms and coding, and kind of defining your own approach to creating music, rather than with soundscape composition, where we were really using existing production tools, but using them with a very deep understanding of how they functioned. And so the album I wanted to look at is by Brian Whitman. It's called A Singular Christmas. This was released in 2004. It became a little bit of a cult classic when it came out, with about 600,000 downloads in the first few weeks. It was actually done as part of his doctoral dissertation work at MIT. And to me, this is one of the most unusual Christmas albums ever released. But before I talk about the album, I thought I'd just say a few words about Brian and his background. He has a master's degree in computer science. Then he got a PhD from MIT in media arts and sciences. And as soon as he graduated from MIT, he co-founded a company that was kind of built on a lot of his doctoral research called the Echo Nest, and he's chief technology officer of it now. Now, you may not have heard of the Echo Nest, but you've almost certainly used the Echo Nest at some point or another. They dubbed themselves a music intelligence platform. And essentially what they are is this giant database of pretty much every song ever recorded, with lots and lots of information about those songs, gleaned from audio analysis of the songs themselves, and kind of spidering around the internet looking at how people are talking about those songs. So it has information on their popularity, and their genres and things like that, but also information about what key they're in, what their tempos are, where all the beats are within the song, what instruments might be in it, things like that. So a lot of different kinds of information comes together in this database, and then the core services that they provide are music recommendation, personalized streaming radio, and personalized playlists, where with a bunch of criteria that you might give it and some seed information about an artist or a song or something like that, it can start generating recommendations or a streaming station or playlist with similar music that it thinks you might like. And so their services are used by a number of different online music services like MTV, Spotify, Rdio, Twitter, Nokia. People like that license the Echo Nest technology to use in their own services. And so A Singular Christmas came out of this very seemingly simple question that Brian had, which was what makes a song Christmas music? What makes it Christmas music as opposed to any other genre of music? And particularly what he wanted to do was to teach a computer to identify Christmas music, so that you could feed it the audio for any song you wanted, and it would be able to tell yes or no, is it a Christmas song? This turned out to be really hard to do, especially since we're not talking about looking at the lyrics here. We're talking about just looking at the audio and trying to get this from the music rather than the lyrics. And so he ended up going in a little bit more of a philosophical direction with this project, with this album, which was trying to understand how do computers hear Christmas music. And so what he did was to algorithmically analyze hundreds of Christmas songs from lots and lots of different Christmas albums, to ask the computer to figure out what the statistically most important parts of these songs were, or aspects of them were. And then he combined all these features from all of these songs together and kind of averaged them out into this result. And this result he then turned back into music, this kind of meta combination of all of these features. And those are what the tracks on the album actually are. And so something kind of strange happens when you do this. And Brian states it very eloquently, so I'm just going to read his quote here from his website. What you've got is the computer trying to spin around all the things it heard that it thought were important about lots of music. But always remember, what a computer thinks is redundant are the very things we rely on for musical enjoyment: repetition, patterns, harmonies, beat. And what it thinks are important are things we would never want to listen to alone. And so what you end up getting with this album are these kind of strange insights into how these music analysis and similarity and recommendation algorithms actually work at a level, how they try to find these elemental aspects of each song, what they think is elemental to each of these. And then we kind of hear that spat back to us as music. And so this album to me is answering not only this narrow question of kind of how do computers hear Christmas music, but this broader question about how do computers hear music? How do they analyze music? How do they kind of pick it apart to use in these algorithms that are powering all of our personalized music experiences today? So like I said, this example is also interesting to me at this introductory point of the course because it brings in so many ideas that we'll be exploring over the next 6 modules. In Module 1, we'll be looking at frequency representations of sound, the idea of analyzing waveform and turning it into a representation of its frequency content, which is a precursor to any of these audio analysis algorithms, like the ones Brian's using to create this piece. We'll look at signal processing and synthesis, and obviously in order to turn any of this analyzed data back into sound requires a synthesis process to actually create that sound again. And so that ties into this project in that way. In Module 5, we'll be focusing on the practice of algorithmic composition, writing code and algorithms to actually create music. And this album is obviously an example of algorithmic composition. It was created entirely by an algorithm that Brian coded up and then executed on the computer. In Module 6, we'll look at 2 kind of cutting-edge practices in the field of music technology, machine musicianship and music information retrieval, which are very much relevant to this album. Music information retrieval, the process of analyzing existing audio to try to learn something from it, is exactly what he's doing in analyzing this Christmas music here. And machine musicianship, this notion that a computer can both listen and create music, is really what this album is about, the listening being the analyzing of the existing Christmas music, and then the creation being the kind of process of using that information and combining it in a new way with an algorithm to create the musical results that come out.